Hello and welcome to That Talk with Tariro, a program that we bring to you all issues to do with women, issues to do with health, issues to do with adolescent boys and girls. And on the program today, we are looking at issues around child protection. And we are joined by Chinga Govati. She is a child protection advocate. That's correct, eh?
Yes,
yes,
is,
and welcome to the talk. So when we're looking at child protection issues, Chinga, what exactly are we talking about? What issues should concern us?
I think we should actually be concerned with issues to do with the whole spectrum of child protection. Mm-hmm. When we are talking about child protection, we are mostly thinking around the law. Is it adequate? Does it adequately cover protection of children? We are also thinking around duty bearers. Are they doing their duty? Is legally provided for in statutes, that is in the laws of the land, including the Constitution. We are also thinking around, for me, what's crucial is thinking around the protection system, but also the justice system. Is it working for children? Yeah. Is it easy to navigate for a person like you and me, lay people, or is something that's complex, and should it remain like that? Or it's time that we think around maybe doing something about that.
So when we are looking at the law, is it adequate? Because you asked the question to say we are looking at, is it adequate? And I'm saying, is it adequate when we are looking at issues of children?
I will answer that in two ways, Terry. Yes. On one hand, it's quite adequate. Why? Because we actually have a constitution that's speaking to child protection. Yes. We have a whole section in our constitution, section 81, that provides for the rights of the child. So at that level, it is adequate because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And it actually provides that any practice, another law, any attitude, any custom that does not follow what's in the Constitution is actually, they call it void. That means it doesn't work. Yeah. So on that end, it is adequate. But you know what's inadequate? What's inadequate are the laws in place that have been there before the era of the new Constitution. As you are aware, we had our new Constitution in 2013. Yes. So we actually had laws before 2013. And the laws are good, but some of the provisions, I'll give examples, some of the provisions in those laws actually need to be re-looked at, because they are actually now not in agreement, kind of in discord with the new Constitution. I'll give an example. If you have heard of the Children's Act, we have an amendment in place, and that amendment is trying just to harmonize the laws, or the law that is there with the Constitution. So I'm happy with that. But what I'm not happy with are actually laws to do with sexual abuse. For instance, we currently have a law that talks about having sexual intercourse with a young person, but the law itself says having extramarital sexual intercourse with a young person. And the extramarital is actually causing a lot of headaches in the sector, because when you look at it, the Constitution is saying a child is somebody below the age of 18. Yeah. But this particular law is talking of a different age group altogether, is 16, huh? Which is 16, which becomes our legal age of consent. Yeah. But the Constitution is talking of 18. But for me, the headache, like I said, is on the clause extramarital. And in
How does it become extramarital?
It means outside of marriage. But in 2016, the Constitutional Court, which was set up after the 2013 Constitution, ruled that child marriage, or a marriage of a person below the age of 18 was actually not in tandem with the law. So we still have extramarital in that law, and we talk about 16. So for me, that also needs to be relooked at.
Maybe explain to us when they're talking about extramarital. So does it mean somebody may be 40 but not married and have a relationship with a minor? What then happens there? Interpret the law for us.
That actually law was meant to protect the customary law provision around marriage. We in Zimbabwe we say we have a dual legal system. We actually recognize and acknowledge customary law. So in terms of the customary law on marriage, there was no age limit. In fact, that customary law is actually yet to be aligned to the Constitution. There is no age limit. So that's the way the extramarital component is coming from.
Okay.
So it just had somebody to say, okay, I'm at a marriageable age, and the parents are in agreement. So that's why you find somebody, if you want to get married today legally, that is with a marriage certificate, you could still be married under what they call the Marriage Act, Chapter 511, or you could marry under the customary law on marriage, which is Chapter 507. So that one is what was then causing or what caused this provision in our law. So we are saying if we are talking about alignment, we may actually need to change that so that it suits the constitutional provision around marriage, the constitutional provision around the definition of a child. I think you remember there was a lot of noise caused quite recently about the Marange issue, where we heard of a story of a child who was alleged to be 14, and now the court papers are saying 15, and they gave birth and then they died. And people were saying she got married to this person. That was under the customary law kind of setup. So that's why we are saying we then end up having headaches. We then end up having predators taking advantage of that gap in our law. So as long as we don't align our laws to the new constitution, we still have this conversation around why do we have this law, yet the constitution itself has a different definition of who a child is.
We will continue with our discussion where we are looking at child protection issues. Chinga Govati is unpacking all those issues for us. Join us. Welcome back. Our discussion continues and our focus is on child protection issues. So when we are looking at, you spoke about the law side, and you also had raised the issue of the protection system. So we are saying, is that also adequate, and what exactly are we looking at?
I'll also answer that in two ways. I would want to think that on that side we have done quite well, because we have partners in place such as UNICEF, Plan International, Save the Children, who are doing great work in terms of supporting organizations and partners and possibly stakeholders, be they state and non-state actors, who are providing protection services. We also have government, I would say, departments in place, such as you have heard of social welfare. Now it's called the Department of Social Development, with community structures. So I really love that. The community structures work towards this kind of, or making the whole system work. That is at community level. Where we have discord and discontent on my part is around just coordinating all the efforts by the partners so that we have a seamless kind of system around protection. So that's where we may have a bit of a challenge, but it works quite well. We have even the victim-friendly unit. For me, I also love it because you can activate it at any level. You can activate it at the lowest level. You can also activate it at the highest level. So those seem to be doing quite well. The challenge is around awareness for me. The other challenges are around just an appreciation of what to do and what not to do. Firstly, to prevent abuse. Secondly, to handle or to manage abuse. That's where we have a challenge. And I will link that up even with the justice system, because I've talked of the victim-friendly unit, and these players as well, they form part of the justice for children system. And for me, the justice system also may need to take a leaf out of the protection system that I talked about. Because if, for instance, Tari, if you were to be called to court today as a witness, do you know what to do?
No.
Do you know questions that will be asked?
I'm actually
Do you
scared of the
even know
courts.
where you are supposed to go?
No.
You see, that's the challenge we have. So for me, it's about awareness. It's about knowledge around the whole system.
How do we get to know, how does this, or what's the best way of having this kind of awareness? Because already those questions that you are raising, it's just not me. I think bulk of us from across the whole spectrum,
I think
we
it
actually
stems
don't
from
know.
the mantra, ignorance of the law is no defense. So the system will just assume you know. If they call you as a witness, they assume you know what to do. But we are saying those partners now in the protection system may do a lot around just raising awareness around and knowledge maybe around the systems. It's a complex system. I mean, somebody who has been in the system may actually be confused. So what more a child? What more a woman who is coming from the rural community? And like I said, we were talking of two systems. Do people know that for this kind of matter, maybe I need to approach my traditional court presiding officer, who is either the headman or the chief. And for this kind of matter, I don't need to do that. I need to invoke the system that has been put in place by the state. So that's the challenge that we have. So for me, it's actually a call for partners who are working in the justice system that we need to do more in terms of raising awareness around what to expect at court. If we are to go to court, which matters go to court, which matters go to your informal justice system. So that's where I think the challenge is. It's just making sure everyone understands and knows. So we link that even with our education sector. Are we doing enough in our schools, in our kindergartens? Are we doing enough just for a child to understand that, okay, if I were to find myself, because the system doesn't discriminate. So if my 4-year-old baby gets abused, they're expected to appear in court and give evidence if they can talk.
Yeah, that's where I then wanted to then say, maybe for people who are actually watching, for our benefit, in terms of how best do we handle abuse, so that at least we result in a conviction. Because most of the time, that child goes to court, there's that fear of the whole system of everything that's happening there. So even when I'm supposed to be a witness, I'm supposed to say whatever, I'm scared. And in the end, that person will walk scot-free.
We actually have a court support system in place. So for instance, if a child were to go to court today in abuse matter, they attend, maybe they appear in the children's court, or they appear in the victim-friendly court. But for me, that court system is adequate. that friendly system is adequate. But the challenge is actually knowing before you even go there, because you then go there and you're told there's support people in place. I think we also need to link that up with our community protection system, so that the support actually starts at community level, and then there's that like kind of seamless connection with the justice, the complex justice system. So when you are aware, for instance, like I said, what is expected of you, what is not expected of you. I've been doing some little audios for certain community groups around what to do and what not to do when we identify or when we discover that our child has been abused. In most cases, when a parent suspects that their child has been abused, what they do is to kind of threaten them and intimidate them. Tell me what happened to you. If you don't tell me, I'm going to do this, I'm going to beat you up, and so forth. And once you do that, and then it comes out, when the matter is now in court, that this child was threatened or intimidated into saying what happened to them, that actually doesn't augur well for a conviction, like you said. So at the end of the day, because there are actually procedures in place that need to be followed, those are the kind of procedures that we say communities need to be aware of, and not for purposes of them tailor-making their evidence to suit what the courts want, but also so that they don't do the wrong thing.
Well, we'll continue with our discussion after this break. Welcome back. Our discussion continues, our focus being issues of child protection. So Chinga, in our country, often we read in the newspapers, we witness even at community level, when abuse has happened, how ready are we to actually make sure that we take the cases through the legal processes, as well as just making sure we are protecting the child, because often we tend to then protect the perpetrator.
The abuser. We have seen it, which is really sad, because at the end of the day, people do that out of ignorance, firstly, but also we have seen that people do that out of fear of the whole system, but also people do that because they don't see any need to protect a child, especially if it's a child who is maybe just being looked after in a family setup. They are probably an orphan. So at the end of the day, we think, well, they don't matter, but every child matters. That's why we have a whole section in the Constitution that's protecting children. It doesn't discriminate. It's not your child or my child. It's also that child on the street. It's also that child who is deep in the community, in the rural community, who has dropped out of school and who is herding our cattle. So at the end of the day, we are saying we need to protect every child. So when an abuse has happened, any child will need to be protected, be it a child, be they a child who is living with a disability, or a child who we think, well, they can't talk, or a child who we think they actually had it coming. They called it on themselves. So at the end of the day, we are saying within those communities, there are child protection structures. Use those structures.
What are those structures
at community level? Like I said, we have under the Department of Social Development, the child care worker, or under the Ministry of Women Affairs, we have the ward co-person. We also have our village health worker. We also have, I think, under the police, we have what they call the neighborhood watch committee members. So you can even also start at school level, where you tell your teacher, where you tell even a friend. Everyone has a role to play in terms of protecting.
But the person that I'm going to tell will discourage me from continuing to speak out.
That's where the challenge is. And we are actually calling on parents and caregivers to say, don't discourage people, and don't think any type of abuse is not serious, because we have had instances where maybe if a child says, they touched me, or they said something about my body, we think, well, it's not an offense. That's still an offense. So let's actually put a stop to such practices and actually attitudes. And I think beliefs, be they religious or even traditional, that perpetuate abuse against children and women, is something that we need to talk about and say, why do we need to stop that? So that child, once they say we have had instances, Tari, where a woman remarries and their husband or boyfriend abuses their child, and they want to cover up because they want to protect their marriage.
Their marriage,
At the expense of your child. I think the relationship that we actually have with our children is more important. Why? Firstly, because they look to us for protection. Secondly, because the law provides that we need to protect. We have a duty of care. We have a duty of protection towards that child. So we urge people to take child protection seriously. Report all matters of abuse to the authorities.
And legally, is there something that can be done, something punitive to those who protect an abuser? Because as long as there is nothing that has happened to somebody.
It's actually an offense when you interfere with legal processes. But we are saying sometimes, because we do this out of ignorance. For me, I would then say, let's educate our communities, because people maybe do that because of certain beliefs that they have, which may be wrong, but they think they're right for them because they grew up knowing that when a child gets or has a relationship with a boy in the community and they fall pregnant, then it's their baby. But I'm thinking, look at it. If your 13-year-old is impregnated by a 16-year-old, do you see them forming a meaningful relationship?
Exactly.
At the end of the day, it becomes our responsibility. So we are saying those children are still children in need of our care and our protection. We can never just say we don't want to protect those children. So seek help. There are people in the community to provide counseling. There are people in the community to provide us with reporting services. We go there and we report. We also, the first thing that we need to do when we suspect that our child has been abused is to seek medical care, so that they are helped in that regard. But in most cases, we get to know about abuse when our baby is 5 months pregnant. So we can still seek help. We can still seek help with the victim-friendly unit in the Department of Social Development, so that not only for purposes of this perpetrator being arrested, because that's one component of the justice protection system, but also so that the child is helped with care before they give birth, and after they give birth. If they are 13, they are bound to be complications. And one thing that I also just want to talk about is people think that when somebody has been arrested, the state will dig a hole and bury them. We don't expect them back in the community, but oftentimes we see them back in the community because the court procedures allow for a person to get bail, so they can come back in the community. But I know in most cases, when that person is back in the community, they'll say, yes, at the end of the day, but it's not. So seek also help from justice for children service providers, justice for women service providers, so that you get to know of the stage of that matter. And in most cases, Tari, you find somebody, accused person has been given a date to appear in court for their matter. We also appear together with the child. No, you don't need to. You are punishing yourself. But if we don't know, then that's bound to happen. That's why I said we actually need to do a lot around raising awareness on the justice system.
Indeed, we need more information when it comes to issues around the justice system. What we would want, particularly with our children, is for us to make sure we put everything in place to protect them. And this is one step that we are taking to make sure that us as a nation are actually aware of the different steps that are available to us that we can take. Until next week, it's goodbye.